Okay, it's 10 o'clock, right on time, and we're ready to go. Thank you for everybody for coming. This is the annual LEPC meeting, the Local Emergency Planning Committee meeting. It's, I think we'll start off with just doing introductions first. I'm Deputy Commissioner Kevin McBride. I'm from the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, which is the chair of the local LEPC.
Good morning, everybody. Andy Moore, Chief of Staff here at Emergency Management.
Good morning, everyone. Mostly London, Transportation Infrastructure Specialist here at Emergency Management.
Good morning, Rudy Monroe, the Deputy Director for Budget Committee here at New York City Emergency Management.
Shoshana Cooper, New York City Transit Operations Planning.
Jeffrey Rhodes, New York State DEC.
Matt Green, Port Authority OEM.
Sharita Hudson, New York City DOT.
Jeff Liu, OEM Legal Affairs.
Diego Pardo, Maria Macross.
Amanda Heath, Department of Social Services.
Chuck Burrows, New York City Transit Security, Counterterrorism.
Ali Hamadi, DOH-MH Environmental Health.
Mary Little, DOH-MH.
Joanne Nurse, New York City DEP.
Harry Meyer, New York City DEP.
Lucille Zabulis, New York City DEP.
Brendan Nolan, Coast Guard Tech, New York Port Recovery.
Elliot Calhoun, New York City OEM Plan Management.
Raphael Ford, New York City DEP.
Kevin Pardo.
And Rob?
Robert Wilson, New York City Emergency Management.
And I hope everybody's at this meeting because they're going to the LEPC, that's what this meeting is. And in case you, for those of you who don't know, it's an annual requirement as part of the SARA Act, SARA 3 Act, which is the Federal Superfund Amendments and Reauthorization Act, and as part of the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act, EPCRA. So I just want to make sure everybody's here. Rob is the acting secretary for the meeting, and I just want to have him read the minutes from last year's meeting. Can you do that quick?
Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Just a quick recap of the 2016 minutes. We opened up regarding the Hazardous Substance Advisory Board. The advisory board meeting was made part of the June 7th LAPC meeting as of last year. Recap 2015 fiscal year and compared to 2014. There was nothing out of the ordinary regarding the 2015 year. There were 358 total responses, an 11.4 increase from 2014. The increase was mostly uniform with respect to various responses. The various categories were listed. All this information can be found online, by the way, if anyone wants further information. Since the last LEPC meeting, there were 10 joint agency partner details. Major events such as New Year's Eve, St. Patrick's Day, United Airlines Half Marathon, Brooklyn Half Marathon. The update for the Tier 2 submissions regarding Right to Know, as of May 21st, 2016, there were approximately 10,415 submissions, 623 of which were from new facilities. There were 9,310 were submitted online, and 1,105 were submitted via hard copy. Approximately half were paid online, while the other half were through paper check. Risk management plans, 343 were on file. As of 2016 of May that year, there were additional 17 facilities. The number of inspections were 8,151 inspections during the fiscal year of 2016. 122 facilities were found to be exempt from the Right to Know law. 393 were in violation of the law, and 242 facilities were out of business. The ECRM2 project update. They gave various information as to the status of this report. There were various noteworthy emergency responses DEP had mentioned regarding the event in Bay Ridge, where DEP responded to chemical spill of an unknown substance. It was identified eventually as rat poison. There were no reported injuries. And special deployments were United States Women's National Team parade, the visit by the Pope, and the 2015 Major League Baseball playoffs. Again, for further detail as to the 2016 meeting minutes, can be found on New York City Emergency Management's website.
Thank you, Rob. Any questions from last year's minutes? Okay, we'll start the meeting off with an update on the Tier 2 submissions. Does everybody have the agenda? Or we sent to everybody, so everybody has a copy of the agenda to follow along? Dr. Harry Meyer, it's an update on the Tier 2 submissions.
Yeah, I will give you the.
Raz?
Yes.
Sulios is going to get the update on the Tier 2.
Okay, on January 1st, 2017, began the 2016 Tier 2 filing period. The Right to Know program conducted a total of 6 workshops demonstrating how to use the online Tier 2 filing system. This year, two of our workshops focused specifically on facilities that they never have been, they never used the online system. This was done in an effort to increase the productivity and downtime. In an effort to accommodate submitters in the outer boroughs, the Right to Know unit conducted one workshop in Staten Island at the Seaview Hospital and another one in the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene in Manhattan. All other workshops were held at our DAP headquarters in Queens. In addition, tutorial videos were uploaded this year to our website to assist submitters through the online process. As of May 31st, the Right to Know program received a total of 10,242 Tier 2 submissions. Out of the 10,242 submissions, 684 submissions were received from new facilities and they were added to our database. A total of 9,163 facilities submitted online and 1,079 facilities submitted hard copy reports. The Right to Know program has a total of 354 risk management plans on file. As of May 2017, an additional 35 facilities are required to submit RMPs. The RTK inspection unit performed a total of 9,743 inspections during the fiscal year 2017. 207 facilities were found to be exempt from the Right to Know law, and 194 were in violation of that law. And this is the summary for the Tier 2 submissions.
Okay.
Wait, Aaron, just, we have some people that called in, which we didn't introduce, so if anybody called in that's on the line, please say hello and introduce yourselves. Is anybody on the line on the conference call?
Yeah.
Oh, could you please identify yourselves?
Ken Redmond, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation.
Welcome. Anybody else?
Omar from here, thank you. Omar, thank you. Omar from
Oh.
Is that it? 3? And I believe 2 people just came in.
Chair, New York City Transit.
Doreen Boatswain, New York City Transit.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everybody. And just with Vaz going over the numbers, I know it's just a lot of numbers for most people sitting here. You know, it's 1,000 of this, a couple hundred of that. But it's just, the point is that there's a lot of work going on in keeping the city safe with the hazardous materials and hazardous chemicals that are out there that are monitored by the DEP. So it's all an effort to make sure the city remains safe. So just, even though it's just all numbers to you, just take the numbers in context of what it is. Thank you, guys. Next on the agenda, Harry, update on the Hazardous Substance Advisory Board, which, just so you know, this is the annual meeting, but during the course of the year, there's quarterly meetings that we have to do. That's Harry's going to get an update on the Hazardous Advisory Substance Board meeting, which is a subset of the LEPC.
Okay, well, first let me begin by saying that for the March 14th meeting that was scheduled. It was actually delayed due to a snowstorm, so we had to postpone. So I'm going to actually recap with the most recent meeting that took place, which was December 13, 2016. I will read the minutes from that meeting and then actually update you on the present stats on response and details and etc. So on December 13, 2016, a meeting was held at approximately 10:05. The minutes were read for the most previous meeting, and it states as follows. Mr. Zamboulias gave a summary of the Right to Know 2015 submission year. And again, I apologize, there'll be more numbers being thrown at you, and there'll be even more numbers as soon as I finish these numbers. Okay. He reported that the RTK filing program conducted a total of 4 workshops demonstrating how to use the online Tier 2 filing system. All workshops were held in Queens at the DEP headquarters, and an additional 2 were scheduled for the 2016 filing year on the 25th of January 2017 in Staten Island and on the 1st of February 2017 in Manhattan. The RTK program received a total of 10,667 Tier 2 submissions for the 2015 filing year. 510 submissions were received from new facilities, 1,174 filed hard copies, and 9,493 filed online. There are 337 risk management plans on file, 14 new RMPs were received, 70 facilities submitted updates, 148 facilities submitted affidavits confirming that there was no change to the current RMP, and a total of 105 notifications were sent to facilities requesting updates of their affidavit for their RMP. The RTK inspection unit performed a total of 10,132 inspections during the 2016 calendar year. 443 facilities are exempted, 930 facilities went out of business, 462 were in violation of the law, to which notices of violations were issued. RTK inspection unit also performed 1,417 survey inspections, and 744 facilities need to comply with the RTK law. Now, in regards to what is called the RRT2, that is a Regional Response Team 2 program that was initiated under the Environmental Protection Agency. It was reported that a meeting was held in Edison, New Jersey on October 12th and 13th of 2016. The Inspector Day initiative was organized by the EPA and was a successful event. At that meeting, EPA gave a presentation on emergency response to an incident involving ice and cold storage, an ice and cold storage facility which stored unsafely thousands of pounds of ammonia for refrigeration purposes. The New York State DEC provided an update on their most significant response to spills and incidents which occurred in the previous 6 months, such as the crane collapse on the Tappan Zee Bridge and the Con Edison feeder line leak under the Hudson. The next following meeting for the RRRT2 was scheduled to take place on April 10th, 2017. In regards to emergency response, I will actually just skip the numbers because I'm going to give you many more numbers in the next few minutes. Basically, in summary, year over year, we're hovering at the 10 to 11% increase in response requests. So, with that segue, I'm going to now give you a lot of numbers to digest. Basically, if we look at fiscal year to fiscal year, from fiscal year 14 to May of this year, fiscal year 17, year over year, we are actually responding to anywhere between 10 to 14% more responses per year. These are basically resulting from the following categories: abandoned chemicals, chemical odors, chemical fires, chemical spills, petroleum spills, indoor investigations, and carbon monoxide type releases. Those are the predominant factors that are causing this 10 to 14% uptick in response requests. Of course, we also address issues with explosives and WMDs, which I will get into, PCB and related transformer incidents, fires, spills, etc. Special investigations, which are basically unique types of spills that are not categorized as regular chemical spills. They may be, intentional or abandoned in such a way where they require further investigation on our part. There are issues with asbestos, which we also work with our asbestos response team. And unfortunately, there are also issues with building collapses and debris and things of that nature. Basically, as I said, 10 to 14%. This has now been a constant situation going back for the past 4 years. We're expecting this to continue, and we're doing our best to address all of these issues on DEP's part. We've been pretty successful in responding to our mandate, and we hope to continue to do that. I'm sure around this table I see many familiar faces to which we respond with, and basically our co-partners, I want to thank you for all of your assistance during responses that involve all of our capabilities. Now, let me go further. Basically, I'm not going to go into detail on special events, but since...
Well, you're jumping ahead here.
No, I didn't go to special events yet. Not yet. No, still part of the 8-7. Okay, because basically, as I said, we ended our meeting from December. So, since December of 16 to present, special events that we participated in were New Year's Eve, St. Patrick's Day, the New York Mets opening day, the Yankees opening day, the 9/11 Memorial Walk, the 5-borough bike tour, the Brooklyn Half Marathon, the Salute to Israel Day Parade, and the National Puerto Rican Day Parade. These are events that have been completed successfully since the last HSAB meeting. I will just say I will hold off on future events, but there is just one coming up this Sunday, which will be the Heritage Pride Parade, which we will be participating in. Now, as to memorable responses?
Didn't get up there.
Not yet? Okay, then I will hold off on memorable responses.
Follow the agenda.
Okay, so I will stop at that point. I got a whole bunch of paper to go through, but I will stop at that point. So,
Does anybody have any questions in regards to the Hazardous Substance Advisory Board? The other thing I would say is the people who are part of the committee, if you would please, if you don't show up in person, we do send out the call-in number, but many times it's very sparsely attended. It makes for a quick meeting, but sometimes some work needs to get done that we need the participants there. So if you are on the list, just try to call in. Usually meetings don't really take that long, but just to get an update on what's going on. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Do we know why we see that increase year over year?
Over which?
This is over the last 4 years, we see an increase every year.
10%.
Any sense why?
10%.
Talking about responses?
Responses.
Well, many of them have to do with natural gas. They've gone up. When it comes out, sometimes it comes chemical odor, natural gas, and because of the notoriety or some incidents regarding gas, and we'll speak later on a memorandum of understanding that was made, but those drive it. But then it's just it depends. There's also a lot more push. It's easier for people to make complaints through 311, so they just have to go online and file. So more complaints coming through there. Next, Harry's going to give an update on the local law 143, which after Hurricane Sandy and all the problems we had with Hurricane Sandy, the city was very concerned with chemicals stored in facilities near the waterways. And initially it started off, we did a best practices advisement that we put together. And after a couple of years, it was actually a law that's been enacted, which is now on the books. and it's for chemical facilities that are vulnerable to extreme weather conditions. So Harry's just giving an update on where we are with the law and what's going on with it.
Okay. Just to give everyone a little history, this law was passed actually proposed and approved for fiscal year 2013. It's called Local Law 143. It was introduced by council members at the time, Van Bramer, Chin, Ferraris, James, Koo, Lander, Mendez, Palma, Rose, Mark, Beverito, and Ulrich. The intention of the law was to address, as the commissioner said, scenarios where extreme weather conditions were to impact chemical facilities and the possible controls or mechanisms that could be implemented to somehow protect those chemicals from being released during such extreme weather events. Extreme weather events include many things according to law, but it's flooding, storm surge, wind, vibration, etc. It's a very broadly worded document. Over the past year or so, a task force was convened consisting of the Department of City Planning, the New York City Law Department, the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, and the New York City Mayor's Office of Recovery and Resiliency to address promulgation of regulations to address some of the, or actually to address the main points of this law in an effective manner. As the commissioner pointed out, after Sandy, DEP did take the initiative, and it always does through its inspection program, to advise facilities that may be located in flood zones on how to some way secure their chemicals from possible impact. Simple things such as elevation, double packing or double drumming, putting in a diking or a pooling control system. Similar, very simple but yet very effective measures. The law, this is not the whole summary of the law, but based on this foundation, this task force convened and is now preparing rules for review that will be presented once everything is approved by the law department to actually allow the DEP, as well as other agencies that are involved, to enforce these regulations in such a way where the facilities that may be impacted will be guided through a process in which they will be able to implement satisfactorily requirements that will protect the facility from releases to the environment. How expansive that will be depends on the particular facility. Some things, as I said before, as simple as elevation 6 feet off the ground, to some cases where you may have double piping engineering systems. All of this is unique to the facility, and the law actually, and the promulgated regulations that will be implemented will take that into consideration. I can't go any further because, as I said, this is still under review in the law department. Once the final document is prepared, I'm sure they will release it for review to the public.
And I have a quick update. This is Katie Schmidt from the law department. So first I just wanted to mention for those of you here from DEC that what we are looking at proposing is to include in these regulations volumes of hazardous material that are above the reporting threshold for community right to know, but below the jurisdiction of DEC when it comes to hazardous storage. And then the second thing is that we are preparing a regulation to have something tangible to talk about. We are working now with our legal counsel division, which, as many of you know, reviews all the regulations promulgated by agencies before they go through the CAPA process. And we are, I think today, reaching back out to DEP to resolve the last number of questions. And then we plan to approach DEC to set up a meeting to talk about delegation and whether that's possible. So that's our first step, but we wanted to come to DEC with a very, a strong example of what we would do and not just a conceptual approach. So the next step is to nail down the last couple of things. We've been working with Melissa to talk about triggers and what types of weather events and what types of notifications would trigger some of these requirements. But soon we'll be reaching out to DEC and set up a meeting to discuss your guys' thoughts.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions on local law? Next on the agenda, emergency response, special deployments, and we'll talk about some of the specifics of a particular job. Harry, that's with you, Dr. Meyer again.
Okay.
Maybe you should sit in this chair.
No, not at all. I'll sit here fine. Okay, actually, I don't want to go over too many. I know, you're saying this guy has plenty of paper, I'm sure he has plenty to talk about, but no. Actually, I minimized it to 2 events, actually. One is very important, and that had to do, and that's basically with OEM as being sponsor, as well as the federal agencies. During the about 2 months ago, or a month and a half, we actually conducted a drill. It was called Gotham Shield. Now, for those of you who don't know it, Gotham Shield had to do with a scenario in which an improvised nuclear device was detonated, and how the various entities respond to such an event. Actually, I believe there were 43, I think it was, entities actually responded as part of this drill. It was an all-day event, and I know we're still awaiting some of the summaries and the after-action reports, but this drill actually was very informative, and I'm sure the outcome will give us a lot of ideas and will allow us to develop programs, SOPs, etc., in the event of such a catastrophe. So that's definitely a memorable, I would call it, response or drill. Another one that took place recently is also somewhat of an interesting situation. It occurred at the beginning of April, and this one actually taxed the ability of NYPD ESU, DEP, and the FBI. Okay. Interesting situation. Thank God it was false, but the situation itself. An individual claimed to have had a nerve agent in a liquid form, and he was releasing it. Definitely your worst case scenario. How do you address a scenario like that? We address everything. We're used to having ammonia spills, gas spills, fires, explosions, asbestos, but a little vial of nerve agent. That was the situation. How do you deal with that?
Well, I think you should get to the ending first. Seriously, just let them know what the ending was before you get to the ending.
The ending of the ending?
No, I don't want anybody getting along with you.
Oh, the outcome was it wasn't real. Okay, all right, how about that?
Yeah, so
it was fake.
The guy had some issues.
He was he was addressing himself as the Queen of Russia, I believe. So we knew that based on that maybe the scenario wasn't real, but we still.
Now you can explain what your response was.
All right. Okay, but with that in mind, even though we know all this, we still have to treat it as real. So we basically had very long discussions amongst ourselves on how to safely package and transport this material. I mean, we know, at the time we assumed it's not real, but of course we needed laboratory confirmation. So we still addressed it as real. We went through all of the scenarios, suiting up, using the precautions, isolating the area, evacuating. Literally, the precinct was shut down during the process. Even though, as I said, we believe it's false. But we actually developed a technique in which we could safely package this material in such a manner where it could be transported to the appropriate federal entities for analysis. I know it seems like it's a small thing, but it's not. I mean, the scenario is you have something that, if it leaks, will basically take out everybody who's around you. So the question is, how do you pack this little vial that could be maybe that big into something that's this wide and make sure that it gets to its destination without shaking, vibrating, leaking, or anything else? So after many hours between the NYPD, the DEP, and the FBI, we did come up with a scenario. And we think we've perfected a technique, and we will actually keep drilling on this technique for the future. Hopefully we'll never have to deal with the scenario again, but in the event we do, we believe we have a method to deal with it. So that's something of memorable discussion. Okay, but other than that, these are things to consider. As everyone says, we're in the world we live in. There's all kinds of things going on, so we're doing our best in the response community to, do what we have to do to protect the citizens. So, two things of importance. And just to go back on future details, as I said, this Sunday, Heritage Pride Parade. And then, of course, the next two long events, actually, the long events are, yes, the U.S. Open and the United Nations General Assembly, but of course, I cannot forget the Subway Series coming up in August.
Yes, but unfortunately, we won't be doing Met playoffs this year,
I think so. I think you're right. Yes, we were hoping, but no. So, with that, I think I did enough talking.
Now, OEM, Mosley?
Yeah, so in terms of emergency responses that we did recently, we had the dielectric fluid spill at the substation that occurred on May 7th. In terms of discussing the incident, we'll first go over the overview of the initial status that we received. Then we'll go into scale up, followed by the current incident status as it's ongoing. So I'll pass it over to Rudy.
Sure, thanks, Mosey. So initially we got notification of as what we call a controlled spill. It's on private property, no leak into the waterway. It was contained, no city resources were required or needed. So Washington Management just pretty much monitored. It wasn't until a little later we got a report of that containment failed. There was a little bit of a leak, and that's where we bounced back over to Mosey for the planning. That's where we got the notification from the Coast Guard, and then we started to scale it up. Back to you, sir.
Yeah, so in terms of the scale, this is where we activated the blue team that was currently on call. And for that, we brought in our different emergency support function coordinators. So that included transportation, utilities, and infrastructure. We had human services and our planning team. So this was to address issues that were related to the oil spill incident, but also in terms of the management and public impacts. So this included impacts of the ferries that were traveling at that time and the disruption of service. For that, it was very minimal. They provided a guidance where they told the current riders just to stay indoors, just because there was fumes in the air and the smell of that. Other impacts was just the fact that the public sheens or slicks in the waterway. So just providing information that those were non-hazardous and just staying out. So a lot of the issues that we were addressing was just more of the public impact and messaging that we were providing for them. So I think with that you could go into just the current status of where.
So currently it's all controlled state. I mean, they're still cleaning up and doing some bulkhead repair. So we're just monitoring it to make sure there's no continuous impact to ferries, assisting with the dive operations as divers go in, stuff like that. Minimal impact to New York City. No city resources city resources continue not to be used, and that's pretty much it.
So in terms of this, I just want to talk a little bit about the best practices as well as lessons learned. In terms of best practices that we found from this incident, I think one of the major ones is the coordination among public health and environmental agencies for the public messaging. So definitely with the type of dielectric fluid, there was a question of PCBs. And going back to Dr. Harry Myron, he mentioned that as one of the major hazards that we're concerned about. But this was a particular incident where the transformer just had used fuel that had PCBs prior, and the current fuel that was in the system would have some trace contaminant. So that was an issue that we were concerned about. But DEP, DEC, as well as health were able to coordinate and look at the material safety data sheet to get information about the substance and make a determination. So the coordination between all three agencies was a big part in determining what type of information will be given to the public. Another best practice, this goes out to the Coast Guard, was the notification of the safety dome zones and speed restrictions. So the biggest thing with the Coast Guard, they approached it where they didn't want to impact operations as well as the public as much. So that allowed a recreation activity still in the area, but enforcing speed restrictions as well as providing a safety zone, as well as adjusting that as the operation proceeded over time. So over time, we saw that the safety zone as well as the speed restrictions were reduced, allowing operations to continue as normal. Another best practice was addressing questions and inquiries from the media through a virtual joint information center, JIC. For that was the best approach to address those issues. There weren't that many inquiries that came in from the Coast Guard. They reported it was probably 13 media inquiries. So I think that in terms of the responsible party content and messaging that we already put out, it did pose some concerns in regards to that. So I think the virtual JIC was, again, a good approach in terms of communicating to the public the issue, and it also allowed each of the individual agencies to continue with the work proceeding forward. In terms of lesson learned, one major thing is discussing the health and safety guidance, but making the distinction between emergency responders and the public. So there's always a question that came up while we were responding to the incident, the public health concerns, but it was definitely a question and making a distinction between what the emergency responders, FD, NYPD, even construction workers or divers that were just in the area doing normal operations. So I think for us, a big lesson learned is just making the distinction between the two, making sure there's a clarity in terms of who we're communicating with. Another thing is the significance of unified command and determining objectives and tasks of the operation. So definitely with an oil spill operation that occurs, the main objective is the oil recovery or removal, but also looking at the secondary and tertiary issues such as impacts to the public, impacts to DOT ferries or whatever the incident may be at that time. So definitely with the unified command, it's really addressing all of those objectives as a whole. Lastly, in terms of lessons learned, determining a threshold and/or triggers for the plan to convene stakeholders. So definitely as the incident evolved, where it first came in as we mentioned, just as a content page in terms of a power outage or the oil spill notification that we got at first, but in terms of the scale of it, it wasn't that severe. But in terms of really understanding the trigger and when to bring in the team or identifying additional partners is something that we'll continue to work on. At DC, I just received the information in terms of a significant incident with some of the ideas or factors of an incident that would scale up or allow us to decide which stakeholders should be involved. So the process is ongoing internally for EM to address some of those issues that we were working on in oil spill protocol. So there will be continued updates for that.
Thank you, Anybody have any questions on the responses that Harry spoke about or the dielectric spill? OEM?
Just quick, from health department, and I reviewed the MSDS, and just so you know, we didn't have any information on the amount. All we got was a MSDS sheet, and it was very difficult to make any kind of determination on potential health effects without knowing the quantity, or without knowing, for example, that there were previously held PCBs. All we got was the Caltron information.
So yeah, I think that was definitely a part of it. Also including to that, I think the issue too is that for the MSDS is that it's for industrial incidents. So even with the scale, it ended up being a very small. It was hard to even apply those standards or those characteristics to that. So that's definitely something that we're considering. And then for the communication piece, that's definitely something that we'll
It's hard for us without those pieces of information.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Next up is, we have on the agenda is the memorandum of understanding between Con Ed, National Grid, and DEP. Just a little background. We talked about before, we respond on natural gas jobs over the complaints. But there was a couple of high-profile incidents that happened over the last couple of years. And as a result of that, OEM, basically, directed by the mayor's office also, put a committee together, a working group, natural gas working group, consisting of OEM, DEP, National Grid, Con Ed, NYPD, FDNY, DOT, a little bit of everybody. As a subgroup of that, there was an MOU committee, which was really chaired by DEP. We've always had MOUs with National Grid and Con Ed on the notification procedure about when and, we would get notified for a gas leak. They were very dated, so there were times we needed to dust them off and redo them, and that's the point we're at now, so we just wanted to give you an update of where we are. And it's, the working group was really great. That's one thing with the city, when you have these kind of incidents, everybody kind of comes together. And, it's not without issues, and everybody has their concerns, but Con Ed, National Grid, very cooperative in doing this, and we've been working together with them, with their legals and our legal people, trying to make sure we cross all the Ts and dot the Is and make something that keeps the city safer, but something that's workable. So Harry Vaz was going to...
Well, Commissioner, you covered everything except, I would like to say, after that subcommittee completed the update of those MOUs, right now the final draft is at the corresponding utility for review by the legal department and execution. So we're at the end of getting close to signing those MOUs. Yes.
Hopefully so. Okay, that's it.
Yes.
That's it for the official agenda. Does anybody have any items, concerns they'd like to bring up? Anybody on the line? No? Okay, so we'll see you next June. And when's the next hazardous substance advisory board meeting? Should be September?
September 12th.
September 12th. So please, if you're on that invite list, you get an invite, please at least call in, spend a half hour, 45 minutes or an hour of your time. It's important that we have participation, so we don't want something to happen and, then, well, we didn't know, we wish we would have a say in that. So please, if you're on the list, make an effort to call in. All right, thank you everybody for coming. Andy, anything?
Thank you.
Thank you.